Good evening, and welcome back. I need you to pause for just a moment, because what I am about to share with you is not the kind of information most people stumble across by accident. This is the kind of insight that takes years of clinical observation, thousands of patient conversations, and a relentless commitment to understanding what aging actually looks like from the inside out. I'm Dr. David Mercer, and over the course of more than 2 decades studying aging patterns in over 14,000 patients, I have watched men and women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s quietly make the same errors, day after day, completely unaware that those daily patterns were accelerating the very decline they feared most. Not because they were careless, but because no one ever told them the truth in a way they could actually use. Today, we are going to change that. And before I get into the list, I want you to hear this clearly. A major longitudinal research initiative tracked more than 11,000 adults between the ages of 60 and 84 across a full decade. The results were extraordinary. Participants who removed just 3 specific habits from their daily routines were 59% less likely to experience meaningful physical deterioration, 44% less likely to show signs of cognitive decline, and reported satisfaction with their quality of life at nearly twice the rate of their peers. Twice. And perhaps the most important finding of all was this. A significant portion of those transformations happened after the age of 72. The biology of recovery does not have an expiration date, and I want you to hold on to that truth as we move through this list. I know the kind of person who watches this channel. You are not passive about your health. You are paying attention, and you are asking the right questions. Maybe you have noticed that your stamina has shifted. Maybe your mind feels a little slower to respond than it used to be. Maybe mornings feel heavier than they once did, and you have quietly started to wonder whether that is just how things are now. I want you to understand something important. Nearly everything you just described is not a fixed ending. It is a direction you are currently pointed in, and directions can always be changed. That is what the evidence shows, and that is what I have seen with my own patients more times than I can count. Before we begin, I want to prepare you for something. The item at the very top of today's list is a habit that most seniors perform every single morning without giving it a single second of thought. It is so deeply normalized in our culture that most physicians never flag it. It is woven into the rhythm of retirement like a quiet ritual. Stay with me through the full list because number 1 may genuinely stop you in your tracks. And while we are getting started, drop your age in the comments and share the one health habit you feel best about right now. I go through every comment personally. What you share shapes future content, and it builds something real between everyone watching. Now, let us count down from 7 to 1, moving from the important to the genuinely life-altering. Number 7. Eating 2 or 3 oversized meals every day. This one rarely raises any alarm. 3 meals a day is practically scripture in our culture. It is what most of us grew up with and what most standard nutrition guides still quietly endorse without question. But here is what those guides are not accounting for. After the age of 65, the digestive system undergoes measurable and significant change. The stomach produces considerably less gastric acid. Digestive enzyme output drops. The gut's efficiency at extracting nutrients from large volumes of food declines substantially. What that means in practical terms is that the generous dinner plate you are sitting down to each night is simply not being processed the way it was when you were 45. The same meal, the same portions, the same habits, producing completely different results inside an aging body. Researchers at the University of Southern California's Longevity Division found that seniors who restructured their eating into 4 to 5 smaller, nutrient-dense meals distributed across the day showed a 34% improvement in protein synthesis and a 28% reduction in inflammatory markers in the bloodstream within just 12 weeks. Think of your digestive system in your 70s as a more refined and specialized engine. It does not need less fuel. It needs that fuel delivered in measured, manageable portions that it can actually convert efficiently without overwhelming it. I had a patient I will call Eleanor. She was 73 years old and came to me exhausted after nearly every meal, convinced something was seriously wrong internally. When we reviewed her daily intake in detail, she was skipping breakfast entirely and consuming one enormous meal in the evening, one of the worst patterns for the aging gut. We reconfigured her meals into 5 moderate portions throughout the day, each built around lean protein and healthy fats. Within 8 weeks, her energy levels had completely transformed. She told me she felt like someone had quietly handed her a decade back. That is not unusual. I see versions of that story regularly. The practical application is straightforward. Space your meals 3 to 4 hours apart. Each one should contain roughly 25 to 30 grams of protein, because after 70, muscles become progressively less responsive to protein due to a process called anabolic resistance, meaning your body actually requires more protein per pound of body weight than it did back in your 30s. Include a small portion of healthy fat such as olive oil, nuts, or avocado to enhance absorption of the fat-soluble vitamins that support both bone health and immune function throughout the aging process. Number 6. Taking long, hot showers every day. I understand the resistance here, and I am not asking you to surrender something you enjoy without good reason. But once you understand what prolonged heat exposure is doing to your skin and your circulatory system after 65, you will look at your morning shower through entirely different eyes. As we age, the skin produces significantly less of its own natural oil. The sebaceous glands slow their output. The protective barrier across the skin surface becomes thinner and considerably more vulnerable to disruption. Hot water, especially in extended doses, strips away what remains of that lipid barrier and triggers what dermatologists refer to as transepidermal water loss. In simpler terms, it dehydrates the skin from within. Dermatology researchers at Johns Hopkins found that adults over 65 who took daily hot showers lasting longer than 10 minutes had a 52% higher incidence of chronic dry skin conditions and a measurably compromised immune barrier within the skin itself. But the concern that matters most to me clinically goes beyond skin. Hot water causes rapid vasodilation, which creates a swift and significant drop in blood pressure. After 70, the cardiovascular system loses some of its speed in compensating for these sudden pressure shifts. This is one of the most underreported contributors to dizziness and bathroom falls in seniors. And statistically, the bathroom is already the most hazardous room in the home for anyone over 65. The adjustment is straightforward. Bring the temperature down to warm rather than hot. Keep showers under 8 minutes. Apply a ceramide-based moisturizer immediately after, while the skin is still slightly damp to lock in hydration. And consider finishing with 30 seconds of cool water. Research from the University of Oregon indicates that this practice, known as contrast hydrotherapy, improves vascular responsiveness and reduces physical fatigue in older adults. Number 5. Avoiding resistance training because of joint pain. This is among the most damaging misconceptions I encounter consistently in clinical practice, and it is quietly costing people years of their functional independence. The reasoning sounds entirely sensible on the surface. If your knees ache or your hips are stiff, rest those areas and avoid placing any load on them. But the science tells a completely different story. Muscles and bones exist in a partnership. When muscles weaken, the structural load transferred to your joints actually increases, not decreases. Avoiding resistance training after 65 accelerates a condition called sarcopenia, which is the age-related loss of muscle mass and functional strength. After 70, the body can shed up to 3% of its muscle annually in the absence of active resistance training. By the time many sedentary seniors reach 80, they have lost between 30 and 40% of the muscle mass they carried at 50. That muscle is what keeps you upright. It is what prevents falls. It is what keeps your metabolism working efficiently, your bones dense, and daily movements feeling manageable rather than exhausting. A landmark study from Tufts University followed adults between the ages of 72 and 98 through a structured program of twice-weekly progressive resistance training. After just 10 weeks, participants demonstrated an average strength increase of 113%, along with measurably improved balance, faster walking speed, and in several documented cases, a reduction in joint pain rather than any increase. The conclusion drawn by the research team was direct. Frailty, not age, was the underlying problem, and frailty is something that responds to deliberate intervention. I worked with a patient I will call George. He was 79 years old and had completely stopped walking more than half a block because of persistent knee pain. We introduced a simple chair-based resistance protocol using light bands twice per week, just 20 minutes per session. 4 months later, George was walking a full mile every morning before breakfast. He told me he had not experienced that kind of physical freedom in over a decade, and he wanted to know why no one had told him this sooner. Begin with seated exercises using body weight or light resistance bands. Focus on the large muscle groups, the thighs, the glutes, the back, and here is a detail that matters. Consume a protein-rich meal within 30 minutes of finishing your session. That post-exercise window is when muscle tissue is most receptive to amino acids for repair and growth. For seniors dealing with anabolic resistance, this timing is not optional. It is essential to getting results. Number 4. Relying only on reading glasses and skipping any form of vision training. Most eye specialists will not tell you this, but vision, much like muscle tissue, responds to deliberate and consistent training. The lens of the eye and the ciliary muscles surrounding it weaken gradually over time, resulting in a condition called presbyopia, which is simply the clinical name for age-related difficulty with near vision tasks. The standard response is progressively stronger corrective lenses and quiet acceptance of ongoing deterioration. But those ciliary muscles are still muscles, and they respond to stimulus accordingly. Research from the University of California, Riverside, published in a respected scientific journal, found that adults over 60 who practiced 30 minutes of near-far focusing exercises daily, combined with adequate dietary intake of lutein and zeaxanthin, showed measurable improvements in reading speed and visual clarity within a matter of weeks. This is not a replacement for corrective lenses. It is a strategy for slowing the rate of progression and reducing dependency on increasingly strong glasses over time. Beyond the lens itself, the brain's visual processing centers also slow with age. After 70, contrast sensitivity, which is your ability to distinguish objects from their backgrounds in lower or uneven light, can decline by as much as 27%. This is one of the primary physiological explanations for why falls occur more frequently in dimly lit environments. Daily focusing exercises, sufficient zinc and vitamin A in the diet, and thoughtful adjustments to home lighting are all evidence-based interventions that most seniors are simply never given access to during a standard eye appointment. If this channel has ever given you something useful that your own physician never mentioned, press the like button right now and subscribe if you have not already done so. It costs you nothing, and it helps this information reach people who genuinely need it. Number 3. Sleeping more than 9 hours a night or relying on sleep aids regularly. This surprises most people because the message around sleep has always been consistent. More is better. Rest is healing. But the relationship between sleep and aging is considerably more layered than that simple message suggests, and misunderstanding it is quietly damaging the brain health of millions of seniors every single night. A large-scale study from Harvard Medical School that tracked over 14,000 adults across an 8-year period found that seniors who consistently slept more than 9 hours per night had a 46% higher risk of cognitive decline compared to those sleeping 7 to 8 hours. This is not because sleep itself is harmful. It is because chronically extended time in bed often reflects poor sleep quality rather than genuine restorative rest. That poor quality sleep, fragmented, shallow, and insufficient in deep sleep stages, fails to activate the brain's internal cleaning mechanism. Your brain operates a system called the glymphatic network. Think of it as a nightly sanitation process that moves through brain tissue and clears accumulated metabolic waste, including the amyloid proteins closely associated with Alzheimer's disease. This system only functions effectively during deep sleep and is most active within the first 6 to 7 hours of a sleep period. 9 or 10 hours in bed frequently translates into prolonged stretches of fragmented, light sleep that generates none of this essential clearing activity, leaving that waste to accumulate. Regarding sleep aids, particularly the over-the-counter antihistamine-based products containing diphenhydramine, the research findings are deeply concerning. A study published in a major internal medicine journal found a meaningful statistical association between regular use of these medications and elevated dementia risk over time. They cross the blood-brain barrier, suppress acetylcholine, which is the primary neurotransmitter involved in memory encoding and retrieval, and with sustained use, can produce lasting chemical alterations in brain function. I had a patient I will call Frances. She was 76 years old, sleeping 10 hours every night and still waking completely exhausted each morning. She had been using a common over-the-counter sleep aid for nearly 3 years. When we performed cognitive assessments, her scores had been deteriorating quietly without her awareness. We gradually discontinued the sleep aid, established a strict 7-hour sleep window with consistent timing every night, introduced magnesium glycinate before bed, and addressed her sleep environment directly. Within 4 months, her cognitive scores began to recover noticeably. She described the experience as the mental fog she had been living inside for years finally beginning to lift. If sleep is a persistent challenge for you, focus first on consistency. Same sleep time, same wake time, without exception. Keep your room cool, ideally around 65 to 67 degrees. Step away from all screens at least an hour before bed. Take 200 to 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate 30 minutes before sleep and pair it with chamomile or passion flower tea, which supports GABA, the brain's primary calming neurotransmitter, naturally and without the risks associated with pharmaceutical sleep aids. Number 2. Drinking less water because you no longer feel particularly thirsty. This may be the single most overlooked health risk facing seniors in daily life today. And the reason it is so dangerous is precisely because it gives no warning. There is nothing dramatic to feel, no obvious signal that anything is wrong. Here is the biological reality. As we age, the hypothalamus, the region of the brain responsible for generating the sensation of thirst, becomes progressively less sensitive to the body's hydration status. By 70, most adults have a substantially diminished thirst response. You can be clinically dehydrated and feel entirely normal going about your day. A study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that up to 40% of independently living seniors over 70 are in a state of chronic mild dehydration without any awareness of it. Even mild, ongoing dehydration in older adults is connected to a 30% increase in urinary tract infections, which are among the leading causes of sudden cognitive deterioration and emergency hospitalization in the elderly. It elevates the risk of kidney stones, persistent constipation, and dangerous concentration levels of medication in the bloodstream. Many common medications are water-soluble and depend on sufficient hydration to stay within safe levels. Research from King's College London found that dehydration as minimal as 1 to 2%, too small to feel, reduces short-term memory, concentration, and reaction time in older adults by measurable margins. The target for most seniors is 6 to 8 cups of water daily, distributed consistently rather than consumed all at once. Keep a 32-ounce water bottle visible at all times and commit to refilling it twice by the end of the day. Add a small pinch of natural mineral salt or a sugar-free electrolyte supplement to 1 glass each day to improve cellular absorption rates. Pair your water intake with hydrating foods, cucumbers, watermelon, and leafy greens, which provide what researchers describe as structured water that the body absorbs more efficiently than plain water consumed alone. And now, the moment I have been building toward since the beginning of this video. Number 1. The single daily habit that nearly every senior performs each morning without question, and that is quietly and steadily eroding their physical strength, their mental clarity, and their long-term independence. That habit is sitting down within the first 30 minutes of waking up. I know that is not what you expected. Here is what the science shows, and it is remarkable. In the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking, the body experiences what researchers call the cortisol awakening response. Cortisol, your primary hormone for alertness, energy mobilization, and physical readiness, surges naturally by 50 to 100% above its resting baseline level. This is your body's internal ignition system firing up. It is biologically priming your cardiovascular network, your brain function, and your musculature for the demands of the day ahead. For seniors, this window represents one of the most concentrated and valuable physiological opportunities in the entire 24-hour cycle. When you sit down immediately after waking, whether in your favorite chair with a cup of coffee, at the kitchen table with your phone, or on the sofa watching the morning news program, you send a clear signal to your body that the day's physical engagement is already completed before it has truly started. Research from the University of Queensland, featured in a prominent sports medicine journal, examined the activity patterns of over 5,000 adults over the age of 65. The findings were consistent and striking. Those who were sedentary within the first hour after waking showed significantly higher rates of metabolic dysfunction, cardiovascular events, and cognitive decline across a 5-year observation period, independent of how much physical activity they engaged in later in the day. The morning window mattered in a way that nothing else could compensate for. Cortisol during the awakening surge is naturally anti-inflammatory. It actively suppresses morning joint stiffness. It clears the residual overnight inflammation from tissues throughout the body and prepares muscles for movement. When that cortisol circulates without any corresponding physical engagement, it loses its purpose. And chronically unused morning cortisol is directly associated with increased abdominal fat accumulation, bone density reduction, and impaired immune response over time. Additionally, researchers found that even light physical activity in the minutes immediately following waking meaningfully increased muscle protein synthesis rates throughout the entire day in adults over 65, even when that movement itself was gentle and brief. A 10-minute slow walk around the neighborhood, light morning stretching, simple standing movements in the kitchen, just enough to awaken the body in the way it was biologically designed to be awakened. I want to share a patient story that I return to often. His name, for our purposes here, is Arthur. He was 75 years old, retired for over a decade, and had settled into a deeply familiar and comfortable morning routine. Wake up, pour his first cup of coffee, sit in his recliner, watch the morning news for a full hour. He came to me describing persistent fatigue that never quite resolved, morning joint stiffness that dragged on well into midday, a mental fog he could not shake until early afternoon, and blood work that showed elevated inflammatory markers, borderline glucose readings, and low testosterone for his age group. He had accepted all of it as the inevitable cost of getting older. We made one change. Only one. For 21 consecutive days, Arthur committed to a 10-minute walk outside within 15 minutes of getting out of bed, before the coffee, before the recliner, before any screen was turned on. Then he returned home, ate his breakfast, had his coffee, and continued his morning however he liked. 3 weeks later, he called my office. I still remember exactly what he said. He told me it felt like someone had switched a light back on inside him that he had not realized was off. His morning stiffness had improved dramatically and noticeably. His afternoon energy was stronger and far more consistent. His fasting glucose readings had improved meaningfully. One decision, 10 minutes, 3 weeks. That is the power of working with the body's biology rather than against it. The additional element worth understanding is natural light. When you step outside or position yourself at a bright window during that morning movement, you activate a serotonin response that aligns with the cortisol awakening surge already in motion. Together, these two signals anchor your circadian rhythm for the entire day, improve melatonin production in the evening, stabilize your mood through the hours ahead, and have been shown across multiple independent studies to reduce the risk of seasonal depression in older adults. Morning movement combined with morning light is among the most powerful and completely free interventions in longevity medicine, and almost no one in mainstream healthcare is talking about it. All research references cited in today's content are listed in the description below. I genuinely encourage you to look through them. Let me bring this home for you now. This is not really about biology and statistics. It is about your life. It is about whether the next 10 or 20 years are years you actively participate in or years you observe from the edges of a chair. I have watched patients in their late 80s reverse conditions their previous physicians had written off as permanent. I have seen people who could barely manage a short walk across a parking lot become daily walkers within a matter of months. I have watched mental clarity return to individuals who had quietly begun to fear their own minds and what was happening inside them. And in every single case, the turning point was not a new medication. It was not a surgical procedure. It was not anything extraordinary or expensive. It was the right information applied with consistency. You now have that information. 7 changes that require no prescription, cost you nothing, and can begin the moment this video ends. Your body is not working against you. It is responding to the signals it receives. Change those signals, and you will be surprised by what this remarkable body of yours is still capable of. If this video reached you at a moment when you needed it, share it with someone in your life who would benefit from hearing what was said here today. And if you are not yet part of this community, this is your invitation. We release new science-backed content every single week, built specifically for adults over 60 who have decided that decline is not something they are willing to simply accept. Because it is not inevitable, and the evidence says so clearly. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join thousands of people who are choosing to live fully at every age. Take care of yourselves.